Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Paleo from Z-Man Games. And Paleo is going to be a cooperative game of survival as you take your, I assume, Paleolithic tribe from, well, almost dying to preferably not dying in this game. You see, ultimately in the game, the way you're going to win every single game is you're going to be building out a cave painting one piece at a time, putting it down into this little canvas like so, trying to build out, I'm sure I can find a piece. There we go. Look, there we got a matching piece like there. You're going to be trying to build out the 5 pieces of your cave painting before you, well, die. That's basically it. You are going to die. That's not the question. The question is whether you can immortalize yourself in history and draw your cave painting and be remembered on, and honestly, the more I talk about this, the more I realize that you're kind of dying either way. It's just a question about being remembered. But that is neither here nor there. The goal of the game is to build out your cave painting 5 pieces before you achieve 5 different skulls representing the various deaths you could have, whether your individual tribes people actually die right there, or alternatively whether you fail to accomplish the various mission cards you'll be given in the different combinations of modules you can be presented with, because the game does give you different modules, different challenges, different ways to dive into the game. Your starting intro game is going to have, 2 of the easier modules, and then from there you can mix and match and build out your own scenario, or use any of the various difficulty levels that the game has as it slowly ramps you up in just what kind of journeys and exploration you're going on. So that's basically how you win and lose. Build your cave painting, you win, die, and you lose, but that's not going to really give you a feel for how this game plays out. Because, well, how do you die? Well, dying is actually pretty easy. It is the easier part of the game. Like I said already, you can alternatively just not fulfill a mission, which generally means you didn't gather enough cards before you ran into the night phase. Or alternatively, it often means that you had various encounters. Let's say you're dealing with a hazard or whatnot that might, for instance, require you to hunger. You can either give up a food from your supply, or alternatively, if you can't, you take a wound because you're hungry, and so you're going to go ahead and take one of these wound markers and place it on one of your people. You get to that skull marker, and one of your people dies right there. And then additionally, speaking of which, every single night you have to feed your people, because if you don't, again, you're going to get these various little death thingies as your people slowly starve to death and whatnot. Like I said, there's a lot of death and not surviving in the game of Paleo. But that's how you lose. That's how you achieve skulls. That's how you, well, basically stop yourself from winning the game. How do you win? Well, like I said already, you're going to build out cave paintings. And that's where the game gets a little bit more nuanced, because how you build out cave paintings is going to be, well, very different. And it's going to be even more different depending on what modules you have, depending on what gear you find, a ton of different ways to build out cave paintings. So for instance, maybe, and I don't know if this is one, here we go. We got a card with a cave painting, the collapsed cave. This is going to represent an event that if we successfully deal with it, then we immortalize that event in our tribe's history. We immortalize it on the wall and we build out one part of our story. You may have a gigantic woolly mammoth that you took down. And again, you immortalize that in your tribe story. But how do you actually engage with these cards? What does an actual round look like? So let's go ahead and shuffle up some cards, representing a little bit of a 2-player game over here. We have 2 players, each with 2 tribespeople, and each with their own deck of cards. The players are going to look through the top 3 cards of the deck and choose one to engage with. You see, you don't know everything on the back of the cards, but you do know the back of the cards. So I'm left with a choice over here. I can go ahead and deal with this card, which is a campfire card, which means it's likely going to deal with potentially crafting various items or adding certain cards to our collective deck for the next round. Potentially beneficial. We have this card over here, which generally is going to be food, and then the additional icon of the mammoth means there's probably something big on the other side. Not a guarantee, but probably. Now, there's a few mammoths we can engage with. Which one that is, we don't really know. Or maybe I just go for something like this card. I'll grab this card over here, which represents some form of gathering. It might be food or it might be wood. Those are the more likely options on that card. Now this player over here is going to go ahead and grab a card. And I think we're going to try to deal with a hazard, because again, we have the campfire, we have the gathering, and we could choose the hazard. Why would we choose a hazard? Because if you don't choose a hazard, it's going to make you deal with it one way or the other. Hazards, if properly dealt with, can potentially be weeded from your deck, taken out of the system, which is helpful because you're trying to ultimately build up a deck that allows you to survive. So dealing with a hazard early on can be a good idea, or alternatively, you may not be well enough equipped to actually deal with it. Once all players have selected their cards, you're going to go ahead and flip them, and we have a solitary wolf. A solitary wolf that we might be able to turn into our own little pet over there. That wolf's going to require 1 eyesight, which is a problem because none of our characters have had any eyesight. None of our characters have any vision or the ability to actually deal with that wolf. It's also going to require we give up a food, which we're going to pretend we have over here. And then it's going to just require that we discard 2 cards from our personal deck and then remove this card from the game, and then we'll get the wolf. The alternative is we can give up a torch, which won't give us the wolf, but it will let us move on, or we lose 2 hearts. So right now what's dealing is we just found a wolf in the wild, and this is a big part of Paleo, the idea that you have this story that's developing, this feeling of actual survival in the game, because we just encountered a wolf. The wolf can be either we can get away from the wolf with the fire, we can ward it off by giving up one of our precious torches, alternatively we can just get eaten a little bit and the wolf runs off, or maybe we're able to actually convince that wolf to join us, where it's going to help us, it's actually going to give us that eyesight. But again, we can't right now, we don't have the eyesight, which means we're a little bit stuck. But let's go ahead and look at this other card. This other card is trees. This card will require 2 crafting, and then we discard 2 cards and we get 3 wood. Or we can just discard 2 cards and get 1 wood. That's simple enough. We can do that right now. We can discard 2 cards from the top of our deck and get a wood. Or alternatively, we can help. And that's an important part of Paleo. That aspect of cooperation is a huge part of the game, where you can choose to help another player contributing your various resources. In this case, we have 2 characters, 2 tribespeople with eyesight. So now, we can combine. We choose to help, we give up the card, we don't actually get any wood, we instead help the solitary wolf, we give up the food, we use the eyesight, we discard 2 cards from this deck to this pile over here, and then now we can add that wolf to our deck, and we additionally remove it from our deck. So we now have a wolf that we can use for our tribe, we've removed the card from the deck, and this card goes to the discard pile. Let's do that one more time and then we'll start moving to the review. So again, 3 more cards, the hazards out of the way. These cards don't really give us much of a choice, so we're just going to grab the middle one because why not? And over here we again have 3 cards. I'm going to grab the woolly mammoth, not because I think it's a good idea, but just so you can see what that's like. And let's go ahead and move these cards a bit out of the way, even though they should really be there. We're just going to move them out of the way, and again, flip these cards. So what do we have here? On this card, we have the medicinal root. Our tribe is trying to collect it. We need the craftsman. We don't have the craftsman, unfortunately. We need the eyesight. We don't have it, so there's nothing we can really do here. And on this card, we have the injured mammoth. This is going to be one of the easier mammoths that you have to beat. And this mammoth over here requires 6 spears. We have 2 spears over here, but that doesn't really help us enough because that's only 2 spears. We require 6 of them. And if we actually took it down, we'd get 5 food, a cave painting, a part of our story immortalized forever in our tribe. And we'd also get 2 bear skins over here, which could be utilized for a variety of things, including protecting ourselves from wounds. But again, we can't do that. We only have 2 spears. Nor can we deal with the medicinal root. So medicinal root. But that means we have any choices over here. This person can't do much. We're going to go ahead and just get rid of the card. It is what it is. And this person is going to take a wound because the problem with an injured mammoth is you can't just leave it alone. It's going to hurt you on the way down. And so sadly, we have to take a wound. Rinse and repeat going through these different journeys until you run out of cards. When you run out of cards, you have to then feed your people, as well as dealing with the various missions. And then along the way, along this journey, you'll have done various things. You'll have crafted various goods over here. Additionally, you'll have potentially added various cards to your deck, which is an important part. As you remove hazards, that's great, but you want to make sure you're adding more cards to your deck to be able to keep that cycle moving. Rinse and repeat until you either die a horrific death, or possibly survive just long enough to write your cave painting on the wall, to tell people your story, and then die a horrific death. But either way, that is basically how Paleo plays out. It's a game of cooperation, of trying to play various cards, work together, try to figure out where can you help, where can you aid, and just doing that again and again until you potentially win or lose. Now, along the way, there are some aspects of story. There's going to be some cards where things are going to be revealed, and you'll have a better idea of what might be behind any given card. You'll have a better idea of what's going to be behind these story cards as well, and that can be solved by starting to add more modules to your deck. By mixing up the various modules you deal with, you're going to take away that element of the unknown as well as upping the difficulty. And you can mix and match and then play it long enough and go back and you'll have forgotten all those things as well, so that's not necessarily a problem there. Which brings us to the review part of this video, what I liked, didn't like, and can see others not liking about Paleo. Now, to begin with, what I like about Paleo is the feeling of teamwork this game gives you. This is a game that you can play solo, in theory. I'm not interested in playing it solo, though. A big part of what I enjoy in Paleo is coming to the table with those respective hands and working together. Having that feeling of cooperation, of narrative, of emergent storytelling as you feel out the time where you managed to recruit another tribes into your tribe, giving you some spears that you needed. You managed to desperately find yourself some stone and then turn it into another rock where you can use those tools to start crafting more wood and then finally build spears. And now finally, with 6 spears in your tribe, you go back at that injured mammoth because you know it's in the deck. It's the only mammoth you haven't taken down. And you work together and finally take that mammoth down and finish the game and win. There's a degree of storytelling in this game that is very present, a degree of just figuring out what you need to do, of encountering those cards, of cycling them back in. Like I said already, it has a deck building feel because you're going to go through that deck multiple times, assuming you don't die too early. And so you're going to know what's behind certain cards. You're going to have a feeling of, well, that might be the time we needed to create a cave and make shelter, and that could be good. That'll give us the tent we need to survive the night with one of these cards. Plus, it's going to add to our story. You have these degrees of things happening that you work together while figuring out how your tribespeople actually survived, or in most cases didn't survive, but once in a while, maybe you survive. And it has that feeling of being a game that is hard, but achievable hard. One thing I've said about cooperative games in general is a good cooperative game has to feel that when you won it, it has to feel like you could have lost it. You were that close. And when you lose it, you also have to feel like you could have won it. Cooperative games have to give you that feeling that it was possible to go either direction. And Paleo very much does that. This is a game that I have lost more often than I have won, but I have won it. And when I've lost it, it felt like I could have maybe just survived another round. And when I've won it, I definitely felt like it's a game that I could have lost at the same time. It gives me that feeling of a challenge as I try to figure out how I'm going to work together. Where am I going to put my precious resources? Am I focusing more on survival? Am I focusing more on getting enough food to feed my villagers? Or maybe I'm trying to craft things because that's essential too. And given a choice, do I help you take down that card? But if I do that, I won't be able to actually build out the various resources and equipment we need. And maybe I can go through this deck of cards over here. This is one of the fun decks in the game. And give ourselves, what's this card over here? A stone circle. We can go ahead and get the stone circle. We can build the stone circle together. If we put this over here and we have 3 craftsmen and we give up 4 rocks, we can build Stonehenge. And that's going to add a little bit of a story to our tribe. It gives us another way. Alternatively, it might instead have been something like, clothing, which turns your various little bear skins into more defensible clothing. So you have all these options, different ways you can build out and augment what and how you deal with the story of your tribespeople and their survival. And then it has that evolving gameplay as well. It has that idea that you have different modules that you'll then shift into your deck, shuffle in, figure out. It's not a game where it's binary. You fight, you play again, and eventually you win. And then what do? You mix in a few more modules and you try again. And you fail again, and then you win again, you fail again, you win again. It gives you that evolving narrative. It gives you that evolving, the narrative of the actual games you play, but then the cycle of being able to dive back in time and time again until you get better and or just remember the challenges you're facing so that you can actually survive and take your tribespeople, again, not so much to victory as it is to just, telling the story before they die. But it has that in this game. As far as what I don't like about the game, there's not really a lot, and I'm going to be fairly pedantic here, but for me, Paleo needs a good player aid. The rulebooks aren't long, and they have all the information well presented in the rulebook, but I would argue that the rulebook does an excellent job of presenting the information in a way that is great for learning the game. They don't do a great job in terms of presenting the information in a way that is easily referenceable. And I think a lot of those things could have been solved by a decent player aid, showing you the various symbols or showing you general cycles or concepts of the game. I think Paleo could have either benefited from either just the back of the rulebook showing you the key things you needed to know, or a player aid that could have been given to players so that they can know all those concepts a little better, a little faster. You teach them the game, they get up and running, but they don't have to ask you every single time to check the rulebook how that type of thing plays out every single time. Again, it's a small pedantic complaint, but that's really all I have as far as complaining about what Paleo doesn't give me. As far as what I can see others not liking, that's going to be a larger category. This is going to be things that don't stop me from enjoying Paleo, but might be a problem for you in terms of what you're looking for. And to begin with, this game absolutely can be luck dependent. Now, I don't mind that because to me, Paleo is about the challenge and the story, and the fact that I win one game because of luck or lose one game because of luck doesn't really bother me, but it might bother you. This is a game where, as you go through the deck, the fact that I draw a card that means I can help you at the key moment when you need to be helped, that can win or lose the game. And if I instead draw a card that doesn't even give me the ability to help, while you draw that mammoth, and I have 4 spears and you have 2 spears and we can take it out, but I can't help you. You'll have moments like that left, right, and center across Paleo. Now, across the game, that luck should balance out, but across any individual instance, you are very much victim to the luck of the game. Victim to the way, what villagers you drew, what craftsman items you drew, what various cards you drew, and the order and the way those cards combined and paired up. There is a lot of luck in Paleo that may make this a game that's not for you. And to a certain extent, the game is also a little bit more about learning than it is about choice. Now, there absolutely is choice in this game. If you want decisions around, well, what do I do at this moment? What do I do at this juncture when I'm given a choice between helping you and or building that spear that might help us later? There's going to be choices like that a lot. but to a certain extent, the game is also about learning. A lot of decisions you make aren't necessarily about choice. For every time you're given an actual choice you have to make, where it's about, do I do this or that, and they're both options, and you have to think it through and decide what is better for your tribe. For every time you actually have that decision, there's going to be multiple instances of 2 cards coming up where there's only one obvious answer. Okay, great, we play these 2 cards. Well, I can't do mine, but I can help you do yours, so I guess I'll help you do yours. Great. Do it again. Okay, well, I can't do mine, but you can help me this time. Great, I'll help you do that. Okay, and again, oh, well, we both can do our own cards, so we'll just do our own cards. You'll have a lot more times where the choice is obvious, the choice is made for you based on what has already happened in the game. And then, yes, every 4th card, every 5th card, you'll have an actual decision you have to make. And then a lot of the game does come back down to the learning. The fact that as you go through the game, you kind of remember that, yes, there was a woolly mammoth behind that card, and it did require 6 spears to take out. So maybe we don't flip this card unless we have at least 6 spears. There's going to be a degree of learning from the game and part of that learning is going to be the nature of the deck builder, the cycling of you go through cards and you know it's there. And part of it will be the fact that you played the game yesterday and you're diving back into it for a second time today. So that may or may not be what you're looking for in terms of the strategic choice or challenges you're looking for in a game. And then the variability. I mentioned this game has a lot of variability in the forms of those modules, and those modules do add a lot of variability, a lot of reasons to dive back into Paleo. At the same time, it's worth noting that the variability, to a certain extent, comes in the form of difficulty scaling. What do you do if you're someone who finds that the intro level of Paleo is where you like it? The intro level of Paleo is exactly the difficulty you like, and more than that, it starts becoming more challenging, too hard for you. Then to a certain extent, the variability that Paleo gives you comes in the form of difficulty scaling, which means if you don't like scaling the difficulty, you are locking off a lot of the variability. Now again, to a certain extent, you can go from modules A and B and C, and it won't be a big shift. But as you move up that ladder, it will be a big shift. So a lot of the variability is locked behind the idea of a difficulty level, which might lock off content from you just because it's too challenging. And then lastly, Paleo is a game that, in my opinion, is best at 2 to 3 players. The box says 2 to 4. It is theoretically playable at 1. I wouldn't recommend it at 1. It takes away from the feeling of cooperation. And at 4, it's just there's too much going on at the table. But at 2 or 3 players, both of those are excellent player counts for the game. Both of those are really solid. 2 is a little faster and a little bit more a feeling of just helping each other. 3 can often leave a man left behind that, oh, I'll help you, you'll help me, but she's going to have to fend for herself, and she may not be able to do her card because of that. So 3 does have that, but it also does feel a little bit more like a tribe. So 2 and 3 players is where, in my opinion, Paleo shines and is a solid way. Either one of those I can easily recommend as a way to dive into the game. As far as final thoughts on Paleo, as far as where it stands for me, this is a delightful game. This is one of those games that I heard a lot of things about. I eventually got it, and then I left it on my shelf unplayed for like 4 or 5 months before I heard people talking about it more, and just finally decided to dive into it for the first time. And it has been such a delightful experience. I love the feeling of teamwork it gives. I love the feeling of deck building and facing challenges and trying to learn and build and grow. To a certain extent, it's going to be like Friday. There's a game Friday from Friedman Freese that gives you a solo survival experience as you play as Robinson Crusoe or as Friday, whatever it is. But this gives me that same feeling to a certain degree, but with a lot more depth behind it and a lot more storytelling behind it as well. A lot more feelings of actually defeating that mammoth, a lot more feeling of actually working towards building Stonehenge. That is so cool when you get this card and you're like, well, now we need to get stone because we only have 1 cave painting piece left and we have to do that. And if we make it to the night phase, we're going to die. We don't have enough food. We have too many people. Our only choice at this point is to try to aggressively pursue getting that stone. And if we do so, maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. Those moments are going to be left, right, and center in this game. Those moments of struggle, of triumph, of trying to survive, of being beaten down, of winning and losing. And Paleo is absolutely delightful in what it does. For me, this is going to be a 4 out of 5. The reason for that lack of a 5, my rating scale for context is going to be down below, but a 4 or 5 is going to be a great game, a solid game, thrilled to add it to my collection, generally, not always. But as far as Paleo, the only reason it's not a 5 for me is going to be that lack of choice. The lack of choice, while it doesn't bother me, it does take a little bit away from where Paleo can be. It's a game where it's more about the learning, it's more about the journey, it's more about the teamwork, and then yes, the occasional decision as well along the way. But past that one aspect, Paleo delivers a delightful cooperative narrative experience that evolves and changes and grows with you as you grow with it. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.